right, I'd like to call the APC meeting to order again and welcome everyone. And a particular welcome to Terry Ann Grover, who is joining us as our new executive support person. So welcome. Glad to have you. And we'll obviously be seeing a lot of you. We're about half of the commissioners, and you'll meet the other half next Wednesday.
Better half.
Now. Commissioner Butt is brutally honest. Let's see, pull my agenda here. So, well,
agenda,
go
can
ahead.
I make a request that we get bookmarks for each agenda item on the electronic copy?
You can hit the bookmark thing on PDF and it finds
I
them?
got 3 bookmarks.
Oh,
That's all.
that's true. There weren't that many.
Yeah, you're right.
And it was not for each item.
Right.
Just, it's a little detail, but
So the next item is public comment, and this is an opportunity for anyone to make a comment on an item that is within our purview but not on today's agenda. We'll take public comments on all the agenda items as we go through them. Is there anyone who would like to make a public comment? Seeing none, the next item is the approval of the minutes from our February 4th meeting.
so moved.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And we move on to the election of the APC chair and vice chair for the upcoming year.
I would nominate Tom Beck to be our new chair.
Okay, is there any other nominations? All right, all those in favor of Commissioner Butt? Aye. Congratulations. Take over.
I can just do it from here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to nominate Vice Chair, Mr. Bob Taylor.
Second.
Are there any other nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Bob.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, and now we're down to the consent calendar. Anybody want to take anything off the consent calendar?
I'd just like to pull item 13 just for a comment. It's
Okay,
Move the remaining items.
is there a second? Okay. Any objections? Or maybe, I don't know, you guys don't do that here, do you?
Yes.
Yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the consent calendar is approved except for item, what,
13.
13? You want to take that up now?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just, really, it's an $18 million item, not something we usually see on consent. And I guess the only one, just to acknowledge that, this is a kind of the safety net that's helped pull this project back together, and I appreciate what ECRF has done. Question I had, is this actually a transfer of funds, or is this a future commitment to help keep this moving forward?
It's a commitment, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just to be totally transparent, that's a lot of money for an RTPA to have. So that is that money, so that to make sure we're being transparent, that's money that they have available, or at the point in time is it estimated, just sort of mathematically?
It's not in the bank yet. It's projected to be available over the course of the project.
Okay, and that fulfills the requirement. So any other federal or state monies that are involved, that fulfills all the requirements necessary in order to move those monies forwards as well.
I'm not sure. I'm sorry, I couldn't understand.
Well, because it's a commitment, does that suffice that if there is any federal or state money or any regional monies that are being expended, does this type of a commitment fully qualify those so that that we don't actually have to put cash in the bank in order to make it happen?
Yes, actually the project is solely funded with Measure J and ECRF at this point, so we don't, thank God, we don't have too many other requirements on us.
Okay, great. I appreciate that, and I would move the item and thank ECRF for this.
Okay, a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. So now we're down to item 14, legislative update.
Good morning, Commissioners. Our state advocate, Mark Watts, regrets he wasn't able to be here this morning, but he did provide as a handout an update on the state side. But I'm going to start with the federal side this morning, and there are just kind of 3 items of note that I want to highlight that aren't necessarily in your packet. The first is that USDOT has released 2 notices of funding recently in the last couple weeks, one for Tiger grants and one for a new program called their Fast Lane Grant Program, which is for freight projects of national significance. So the Tiger grant amount is $500 million. The freight amount is $800 million. So I know that our team will be looking at both of those pretty carefully to see if there's anything that we should be submitting for. Also, at our last meeting, we talked briefly about the FAA reauthorization bill and how the self-help counties were working with our congressional delegation to try to be sure that we were exempt from the new FAA rule that would allow them to kind of reach into our sales tax dollars for anything related to airports. We have been working really closely. Congresswoman Napolitano actually introduced an amendment to that bill on behalf of the self-help counties and had a discussion with Chairman Schuster, and he was not quite ready to accept it. So he agreed that instead of going on the record and saying, I don't accept it, and voting it down and opposing it, that he would continue to work with her staff kind of behind the scenes to try to figure out how to address this issue. There's also some folks in Georgia who have some similar concerns about that particular rule. So it's still moving, just a little slower than we'd like. And if the House declines to really take that up, we've been talking with Senator Barbara Boxer's office quite frequently, and they are ready to help be a champion as well to try to get us accepted from that rule. So that's what's happening on the federal side. On the state side, as you can see from Mr. Watts's update, there's some money potentially coming back to transportation. It's still a little uncertain how the TCRP repayments will come back, but we'll be watching that very closely as there could potentially be some dollars coming back to Hercules. As you are probably aware from recent news stories, the gas tax has been adjusted down, and Hicham gave you an update last month on how that could potentially affect our STIP dollars. So that's also something that I know that he's been working really hard with MTC on to try to preserve as much as we can or position ourselves for the future. And lastly, I just want to give you an update on a bill that Mr. Watts mentioned last time that we kind of decided to support in concept and watch, and that was AB 1746, which is the bus on shoulder bill. So that has now officially been introduced, and County Connection is included, AC Transit is included, and I believe we're looking at potentially trying to get Tri-Delta included as well for Highway 4. So that is likely something that we will come back and ask you to take an official support position on, but I think it's something that could really benefit our transit agencies in the future to help make them more efficient. So that concludes my report this morning, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions? Comments? Okay, that takes us down. I'm having the same trouble Julie is here getting to my...
Having to flip a bunch of pages to
Okay,
get there.
this brings us down to item 15. Approval of revisions for fiscal year 2015-16 mid-year budget for the Contra Costa Transportation Authority and Congestion Management Agency, Resolution 15-18-A, Revision 1.
Good morning, Chair Butt and Commissioners. We're here this morning, as you said, for the mid-year budget revisions. Every year in about April and May, we work on the annual budget, and we get together in January and February to start working on the mid-year budget. CCTA's process for working on the mid-year budget, we're starting a little later in the year as the majority of our expenditures are all related to capital projects, and the timing of getting those invoices in is 30 to 60 days after the work's been completed, so it's hard to do the estimates at that point in time. Right here is a breakdown of the original budget and the projected mid-year fiscal year 16. As we look through this, we can have our sales tax revenues, which is $82.4 million, and then we have our budgeted federal, state, and local revenues that have come in. Those have increased quite a bit, and I'll cover those in a separate slide. Bond proceeds in there, the use of the bond proceeds to fund the capital projects is being decreased $20 million, and we'll get into that as we go through the slides. We also have the increase, as you see up there, for the federal, state, and local revenues, and the also decrease in the projects, which is swinging the use of the bond proceeds down. The other sources would be reserves from the projects and programs to fund a number of the different programs that we've received money over prior fiscal years. We also have the project section, programs, planning, administration, and debt service. We'll go through the project section and talk about some of the projects that have seen some decreases. All of these are outlined in the staff report as well. And that covers. On the sales tax revenues, which is our bread and butter here, you can see that as we go back to 2013, we have $74.8 million, and we've seen increases year over year. And so far, year to date, we've received about 53.5% of the 6-month projection. Things look pretty good. And as we go to the next slide, we can cover some of the top sales tax categories. This is just the first 3 months of the fiscal year. The State Board of Equalization sends out the reports. They're a couple months behind on getting the information. I only had 5 months. We don't have the full 6 months in here, so I've only done the slide for the first 3 months of the fiscal year. The big one in there is the gas tax. As we all know, the prices of gas have gone down. We've seen a big drop on that. Gas is about 8.5% of our total revenue that we've received. The top 10 categories listed there are made up of 15 of the 100 different categories for sales tax revenue. Those represent about 76% of the total revenue that we receive. The strong ones are new auto sales, restaurants, and retail. Construction and heavy equipment has gone up in the first quarter of this year, and in the next few months we'll be doing another update to the sales tax revenues for the authority as we move forward. But right now, the sales tax projections, we're going to leave them as flat. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We don't know what's going to happen with the gas tax and some of the other items. As we look at historical dollars, our sales tax revenue, what we just covered, the federal, state, and local numbers continue to swing upwards. In 2014, we had the Caldecott. 2015, we had some of that as well, and some of the new revenue sources on State Route 4 and other projects as well. The projected revenues for capital projects increased $12.7 million to $53.2 million. The RM2 dollars, which is used for the median, a lot of the median work we're paying for in State Route 4 for EBART. The BATA funds are going up by $4.2 million. That's for the SR 4 160. The increase there is due to some late billing from receiving some expenditures from the prior fiscal year, so we're increasing that budget amount there. Some project use of funds for quarter mobility is being extended to next fiscal year, and the ECRFA money is being reduced about $1.5 million, as Hisham was discussing the $18 million for the Balfour project. That's being deferred to next year, so we'll start using some of those funds as we move into the future fiscal years. As we're looking at the total projects and the use of bond proceeds is about 80. In the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see about $80.5 million. That's how we're going to use the bond proceeds that's projected this fiscal year. We have about $133 million in proposed projects in Measure J, and the columns to the right and to the left up there are showing how each one of the funding categories is used for each project. And as we talked about other funding sources, here is a breakdown of the dollar, for every dollar that we receive, how that's dispersed among the individual projects and programs. And you can see in the bottom right-hand corner or the far right column, you have program reserves. So as we collect the money and use it to pay for the expenditures during the fiscal year, sometimes there's projects that fall over from one year to another year in the timing of payments for future or for prior commitments. So sometimes there's a drawdown on prior year money. You can see here it's about $6.5 million for Measure J. And then in Measure C, we're using about $6.1 million, which is money that we've collected, and we're still working on some 680 projects, which is probably the bigger project that's in Measure C currently. Projected expenditures for all departments is about $236.2 million. The project expenditures decreased about $10.9 million to $142.1 million due to the timing of projects. Once again, when we shift revenue from one year to another year, it's not a loss of a revenue commitment. It's just the timing of projects, and maybe sometimes there might be an expiration on some of these funding things. So instead of using Measure C money, we try and make sure we use all of our external sources first. Some of the biggest swinging things in there is the BART rail extension. We've reduced it about $6.2 million, which is due to the timing of the project. You can see the I-80 corridor. It seems to be moving along a little faster than we first anticipated last year, and so we're going to see a shift in just the Measure J projects, about $7.8 million. Proposed expenditures for administration, programs, and planning. We go through the administration, which has the 1% cap on using for salaries and benefits. You can see it's about $700,000. That represents about 86% of the 1% limitation. The programs is going down about $3.7 million. That, again, is due to the timing of some expectations on when we'll be paying out on some of these specific programs. The sub-regional transportation needs went down about $2.1 million due to some projects that were in there that are being deferred to a future fiscal year. The planning department is seeing an increase of about $600,000 net, but in there, of the $7.9 million, we have $2.1 million for work related to the public outreach on the tax expenditure plan. We also have about $2.4 million earmarked for the CMA and the CMP support. We also have a study for the West Contra Costa high capacity study and the express bus that are being done. And several contracts and studies are partially funded by grant revenues as well. The debt service is going to be about $29.5 million. We're decreasing it about $3.5 million from the original budget due to the timing and issuance of the bond. We had thought it would issue earlier in the fiscal year when we did the budget last year, so our interest payments due for the fiscal year are being decreased by about $3.5 million. And then overall, on the drawdown of the bond proceeds, it shows that we're projected to do about $80.5 million, but prior monies from the 2012 bond were around $30 to $35 million at the end of the fiscal year, so we'll be using those funds first, or we already have used those funds, and we'll be using what's left of the 2015 that was just issued in October. Sales tax revenues continue to show growth year over year, but our expenditures for projects are increasing, and we're adjusting the timing on these as quickly as possible. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Questions?
I don't know where this, Bob, through the chair, excuse me. I don't know if Randy, you can help me or whatever this is. The 160 ramps, is that done?
It's open. The closeout of the contract.
No, but I mean, we closed the contract, and where would that fit in our budget process on that?
That's, what is that bond? It's not, toll money.
BATA.
It's
Those would be BATA funds.
Yeah, BATA.
Okay.
And then due to the timing, of the final inspection and I'm not a construction manager, but
It'll
take
show
several
up.
months before, just like the Caldecott, we still haven't paid the final construction pieces and trying to get some of those things from Caltrans. But on this one, we were the AAA, so we kind of have a little more control over this one, and it'll probably be done soon.
Any other questions, comments? Newell?
I just have a comment. One, thank you and Randy for doing an outstanding job. And that's a real brief summary, very concise. The report and the documentation you provided is pretty deep and robust. And we appreciate the care and caution you do to make sure the color of our money has so many different strings attached to it. It's a complex puzzle, but you guys do an outstanding job. So thank you.
Is that a motion?
And I would also make a motion to move the mid-year adjustment. Thank you.
Is that a second? Okay, motion by Newell, second by Julie. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? A motion carries. And that brings us down to item 16, correspondence and news clippings. Randy?
Commissioners, I have on the dais is invitation to the second annual Redefining Mobility Summit on April 21st. I think it's going to be at the Concord Hilton as long as we get the right room, correct? And so I welcome all of you to join us there. And we're working on the agenda now. Lindsay swore she would not do another one, and then about 6 months later she said she was up for it again, so thank you.
Can we have a driverless car pick us up at the BART station?
It depends on how 1592, AB 1592.
Okay. Any other correspondence items? Okay. Commissioner staff comments. The chair doesn't have any comments, except to thank you for electing me chair, I guess. Other commissioners' comments?
Yes, sir,
Bob?
I do. And I will make this comment also at the regular CCTA board meeting. Denise, thank you for the 160 ramp. I know that is just so easy to put together. That's what I said, Lindsay.
You said Denise.
Oh, I'm thanking Denise too. Did I say that? Oh my God, I got something with Denise here. But Lindsay, thank you so much, because to get all those politicians together, get the bus coordinated and all, I mean, obviously it's a lot of work. Randy said he did it all, but I really think you had a lot to do with it. And it was, I think, very successful, and they're up and running. And I got to be honest with you, this morning my mind was preoccupied. I went by the ramps because I'm used to seeing right. Went on by, and I said, wait a minute, I passed it. So obviously it's working. And then the other issue, and I saw it come in, but today Denise's last day or tomorrow. So I don't know how I relate to her, how we relate to her. Thank you, because she's been an intricate part of my life since I've been here. So I'm just trying to say thank you to her. I will.
We'll pass that word on.
Would you pass that word? I'm sure the board here would like to. My sentiments precisely. That's it for me.
Regarding Bob's ramp, you better get the GPS updated in your cars. Last time I was out there, my GPS said I was out in the middle of a cornfield. Any other comments from commissioners? Executive staff comments?
Carrie Ann, do you want to say anything for the record?
Hi, it's nice to meet all of you. I met all of you in the kitchen except for Dawn. I've been with City of Loyola for 13 years, and then now I'm over here. So I come with some background in public works and transportation and city clerk. So I look forward to working with all of you.
Welcome. Any other business? So, yes, Susan?
Yes, I'd like to mention that we'll be adding an item, taking it directly to the authority for a contract amendment for CH Chum Hill for the direct access ramp project. So we'll be putting that directly on the board agenda.
So we have a closed session now, is that correct? Are we going to do it here? Are we going to do it? Okay.
Jamar, mail me.
We are reconvened and we have no reportable actions. Unless somebody has something else, this meeting is adjourned.